Well, next Tuesday marks 2 years since the deadly Hard Rock Hotel collapse, but new information is still coming out that could help hold people accountable.
Last week, investigative reporter David Hammer got that exclusive video showing the moment the collapse began and the horrific aftermath. And now David's bringing us new details of a federal investigation that has not yet been released that says the collapse was, quote, waiting to happen.
Before he ever planned to build a Hard Rock hotel at the edge of the French Quarter, developer Mohan Kailas sent his son Praveen before the city council in 2011 to lobby for special permission to build a retail and residential high-rise almost 3 times taller than what zoning laws allowed.
Without doing this, we don't stand any chance for a high-end retailer.
City Councilwoman Kristen Gislason-Palmer went to bat for the project, pushing her colleagues to grant a conditional use permit that let Kailas build up to 190 feet. And originally, that was the plan Kailas submitted to the city. But after Hard Rock signed on to the project, Kailas called for big changes. A 205-foot building with 13-foot ceilings in penthouse apartments and a pool deck and finished bar on the 18th floor rooftop. Palmer said she would not agree to let the building go above the 190-foot limit. So on March 7, 2018, the construction team laid out a plan to keep the roof at 190 feet, but also to keep taller penthouse ceilings by making the steel beams that support the floors thinner, much thinner.
So one of the things they did was use shallower beams, which they went from 21 inches deep down to 10 inches deep.
The idea was this. Thinner beams supporting the floor above would allow for higher ceilings below. 21-inch thick beams would let the builders hang the ceiling here, but 10-inch thick beams would give them an extra 11 inches of headroom. But thinner beams also have a major downside. We asked 2 independent structural engineers to review the internal construction documents we obtained from civil lawsuits. Both said the thinner beams likely had a major impact on the strength of the building. California-based engineer Michael Bradbury called our findings a potential smoking gun for investigators looking into possible criminal negligence.
This is potentially a significant discovery, am I right?
Very significant discovery.
This document shows the builder's plan to offset the impact of thinner beams by adding more steel columns. But we compared blueprints from before the change with the plans the construction crew was following in October 2019 when the building collapsed, and only 1 extra column was added to the 16th and 17th floors along Rampart Street. That gave them 12 columns along that edge. Bradbury said they would have needed at least 24 columns of that same size to properly support the floors above.
I was really shocked to see how few columns they added.
And like the beams, the columns they ended up using were also significantly smaller than what was in the original plans. All 12 of the columns installed along the Rampart Street edge were W6 by 20s, 6 inches wide with a weight of 20 pounds per foot, while the 11 columns in the original plans were all W10 by 49s, 10 inches wide and 49 pounds per foot.
Think of it like this. If you take a board and you place it on some PVC pipe, the pipe will hold just fine. But if you take something smaller and flimsier like a straw and place the board on top, the straw collapses. Now Bradbury says that the W6 columns used at the Hard Rock were way flimsier than the W10s.
The W6 was 1/8 of the stiffness as the W10 that they originally put in the pricing set. So that is a big problem.
An especially big problem when they poured the last heavy concrete floor on top of those columns on October 5th, 2019. One worker took video of temporary shoring poles buckling under those floors on October 10th. And on October 12th, it all came crashing down. Video obtained exclusively by Channel 4 shows the collapse starting near the corner of the building closest to Rampart and Iberville, right where the thinner beams and columns were used to support the 17th and 18th floors. So who is ultimately responsible for this? The Federal Occupational Safety and Health Administration has already issued violations against the project engineer and the steel contractor. Citations against engineer James Heaslip allege floor beams on the 16th floor were underdesigned for the loads that they would need to support, and structural steel connections were inadequately designed. OSHA also cited Hub Steel, saying steel beams on the 16th floor were not connected to columns on the 15th floor as required and did not meet the specified load requirements. We obtained photos taken inside the construction site before the collapse. Here are handwritten notes indicating some beams were shorter than what the plans called for. OSHA's investigation found that some of the bolt holes connecting beams to columns didn't match up and were welded together instead. But the biggest issue for OSHA's engineer was the thinner beams. He found 81 beams on the 16th floor that were too small to handle the weight of the top 3 floors. Walter Zenner, an engineer hired by Kalis, says the change to the penthouse ceilings that resulted in thinner beams under the 17th and 18th floors did not cause the collapse. He says the problem was all with the beams under the 16th floor.
The beams on the 16th floor were the same size as the ones on all the floors below. It was carrying its own floor plus the 2 additional floors above and the roof. So they were like 300% overstressed, based on my calculations. It's still the engineer's responsibility to design a safe structure.
And in the end, Bradbury says that's what this case comes down to.
That's what he's responsible for. The engineer is to make sure it doesn't fall down.
Heaslip and Hub Steel are both contesting their OSHA violations. District Attorney Jason Williams says he wants OSHA's full investigation report so he can file possible criminal charges against those who caused the collapse. But OSHA won't release its final report until all appeals in the case have been heard. Heaslip's appeal won't be heard until July 26, 2022. David Hammer, Eyewitness News.
So we reached out to Heaslip Engineering and Hub Steel to specifically ask about the reduced beam and column sizes. Hub Steel did not respond, but James Heaslip sent us the same statement that he sent the last time we did a story, saying, quote, "We have denied and are contesting all allegations of fault and negligence asserted in the legal proceedings related to the Hard Rock Hotel collapse. And we stand behind our company's track record of designing projects that meet applicable engineering standards."